Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Physiology Secrets podcast. Got another guest on today, and someone that we've been trying to get on for a couple of weeks now, who we absolutely love his work in the running space. We've got Paul Mackinnon here, balance runner, to talk about everything to do with run technique, gives a rundown of what he does, and how he sort of revolutionises the way that the people sort of change their running economy to be better athletes overall. So, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for coming on. Just give us a quick rundown about what you do, who you are, what your background is, and sort of how you came to be what everyone knows as a balance runner.
How long have we got? That's four big questions. What I do, I specialise in run technique for either pure running or running-based sports. So obviously with triathlon, but then into running-based sports like AFL, soccer, hockey, anything where running is the main part of the sport, and then the skills on top of it is probably where I focus, and it is just a specialisation in technique, and for that individual. Background of me, played hockey as a junior all the way until I was about 32. Got towards a pretty high level. Played professionally for 6 years over in Europe. Went to 2 indoor hockey World Cups. Always found running to be a strength of mine, or turned it into a strength of mine. I was probably similar to a lot of athletes that I see, and had some poor mechanics and poor movement, and was taught how to do it a lot better, which then helped me turn it into a strength, which was really cool. Given that running was a passion, and I had a real interest in how I was taught, that's how it probably developed into what I've got now. Education backgrounds, it's a PE teaching, sports science is a major, so the coaching, teaching, interest in the running and the background in all that kind of come together into what I do now with the balance runner. So it is a lot about initially having some self-awareness for the individual to understand how they currently move, what that feels like, how that's affecting speed, efficiency, possible injury, and then making small cue-based changes to get them moving better.
Yeah, cool. So, quickly sort of touched on, you're not from that traditional athletics background. You're coming from field hockey background into running. How'd you sort of get to that progression of now being the go-to, what we like to call the go-to guy on running technique? Who'd you learn from? What was that process like to go from field hockey athlete to now one of the better running coaches going around?
Thanks.
I'll pump your tyres up a few times.
Yeah, appreciate it. As I said, I had a real passion about running when I was playing hockey, and I'd go out and do a fair bit of for hockey, but also just because I really enjoyed it. And it was one of the things as a younger an athlete, even listening to my own footsteps out on the trails in Canberra and hearing something different, and starting to try and manipulate it or ask the questions as to why that was happening. So whilst hockey was my passion and what I was relatively good at, running was always something of interest. I always thought I'd love to be a 5 or 10k elite runner. I'll probably never get to that point, and certainly won't now. But if someone asked the question, it'd be like, I'd love to be a 10k runner, not Tiger Woods or a quarterback or anything. I learned off a guy called Lex Anderson in Canberra, and he's been developing this kind of a method or technique or an understanding over the course of probably 20 years. So whilst he was developing that, I was actually learning off him myself, but also he was really nice enough or generous enough to actually say, well, come down and learn what I'm doing, because you're already starting to pick up on it with that footstep stuff. Cool. And that's probably allowed me just to develop an understanding of movement itself, rather than a background in athletics or the strict science of it. So that understanding movement and how each thing affects each other. And that's probably where the fortunate position of not coming from the running background, because it can kind of see difference in different people and understand how that affects and can change.
Yeah, there's no real preconceived idea about what something should look like. It's, I'm breaking down this person's movement now, and how is it actually going to be better, rather than trying to fit them to this mould of this is what a runner should look like. That's pretty cool. So, sort of leading into that, in terms of the philosophy behind what you do, what is that process? You mentioned before it's more about movement, bit of self-awareness. What are you trying to achieve? Like, I've been through these sessions, but for the guys who haven't before, what are you trying to achieve in terms of getting your client to feel throughout the session, and how is that going to lead them to moving better?
The initial part of the self-awareness is for them to understand how they move and how they position, because a lot of people don't quite understand any imbalances, asymmetries in their movement. So it's kind of highlighting those, but then also getting them to feel how that affects down through the chain. So then they can start to tell a story if they've been injured, or why they have the certain data output that they get and why those numbers, and it kind of gets them to feel it, rather than just telling them or showing them on a video and saying this is why, and then still scratching their head and go, oh, it all makes sense because I can see it, but I feel like I'm imbalanced. And it's like, oh, I feel like I'm running really well, but then I see myself in a mirror or in a reflection in the window, and that's not what I feel. So it's getting them to feel what I see. So that's where like the teaching background and understanding language and all that sort of stuff helps to get them to feel and understand what they are actually doing.
Yeah.
Once they can get that really good kinesthetic awareness of what they're currently doing, then they can feel each cue and how that makes the change. So for me, it's not trying to match someone to, an elite runner or someone like that. It's trying to get them moving in a manner suited to their body, and get them in a position that gives them the most efficiency for that movement. And that can be different from each individual, depending on the individual's anatomy, physiology, but also the history of sport or injury, because that can change. So then it's understanding, and it's got to fit within that person. It can't be fitting into a book or, like the traditional coaching cues that are really outcome based. It's to know what is the stimulus for that outcome, how can we change that to allow the outcome to be a more efficient movement.
Yeah, cool. So it's a really weird process. The first time I went through it was like, what the hell? Like, you feel this everything that you wouldn't have imagined you were doing. But yeah, it definitely does change a lot. So in terms of, I guess, some of the biggest changes you've seen, maybe just a few examples of, you don't have to name names, but in terms of athletes, clients, anyone who's come to see you that has had a pre-existing issue or has come to you for a particular reason, has made a dramatic change to their movement just by being a bit more self-aware. Any sort of example that stick out? I guess that led to maybe a performance outcome.
So I guess the first one that always sticks out to me is an injury-based individual that turned up, and he had only just prior been told that he had to have compartment syndrome release. He himself is a doctor, and he's gone to the surgeon and said, what do I need? And they said, we'll have to have this release. And once he turned up, it was an understanding of what and why was that creating the pressure and the muscle use to then create that blood flow and that growth. So he was told he had to have surgery. Within 6 weeks we had him running 5K. Couldn't run a kilometre before it without having to stop and have that pain. Obviously didn't have the surgery. 6 weeks later he ran his first 5K. And that's a guy that came through Mets. And like I know you guys are saying, like, we're trying to get him to move, but all of a sudden he's breaking down. And it wasn't a loading, it wasn't an overtraining, it was literally the movement he made, the muscles that he was using never switched off. As soon as we got him to start to switch off and change his mechanics, it's fine. He never had to have surgery, hasn't been in since, does enough running that he enjoys. That's probably my biggest one from an injury side of, if you can stop someone from going under the knife, it's always
absolutely
pretty handy. I think James Hansen's probably the other one. He's turned up as an elite runner.
He was already quick.
He was already really quick. And then we've done probably 6-9 months worth of work with him now, and he runs a 3K on a Thursday night, an 11-second PB. Like, for a guy who's already quick,
that's huge.
To go from 8:04 to 7:53,
it's massive.
It's pretty big. So he's probably one. There's heaps of breaking 20 minutes for a first time at a park run with someone who she started at 26 minutes, and like little things like that. They're all big for those individuals.
Because that's a big thing too, and I guess it's the technique side of things that doesn't discriminate across athletes. Whereas you can get as fit as you like, and even the example of James, who, for those who've seen some of our previous stuff, would know that James maxes out the treadie when he comes in and tests and just kills it. A freak of an athlete, but he's got unbelievable physiology. But he's still able to gain 11 seconds out of his running economy, his movement, not necessarily how fit he is. He's just translating that to a more effective movement. So it's probably more down that path of how can we not waste any of what we've got? Just maximising. There's really no downside to improving your movement at all. So something I did want to sort of bring up, it's a hashtag you use a lot in terms of who taught you to run.
Yeah.
Is that right? Who taught you to run?
Who taught you to run?
One, where did that come from? But do you think, two, I was just sort of thinking about the other day, do you reckon there's a bit of an issue with when we sort of learn to run, or a lack of learning to run, that is causing people to sort of grow up or develop in a way that they don't run too effectively to start with, and then it causes all these issues? Is it something that we could have potentially prevented in the first place?
Yeah. Well, I think on the last question, it's twofold. It's yes, it is something we can prevent, but it's got to be taught correctly. Just like anything, it's got to be taught correctly. And I'm certainly not saying I'm the only one that teaches it correctly, but I think historically, run technique hasn't been taught well, and that's why there's a lot of people say they do it, but there's not a lot of people going to run technique specialists and getting a lot out of it. I always talk about, if you go to a technique session or course, firstly, if they say that you can do it in 90 minutes, or if you can do a 4-hour course and get all the cues you need to run better, I call BS on that, because like anything, it takes time. And I don't know, I just think if it had been done well, more people would have been doing it, as in athletes would be going to get their technique changed. In running, the difference between a really good mover and a really poor mover is quite large, and yet we've got really good movers and really poor movers competing at marathons and Olympics next to each other. That poor mover has the physiology in a massive tank to the point where they can move poorly and still compete. So for me, I see the difference and the possibility for improvement within the running space if it's done well. It's huge. Less so in swimming, less so in cycling, because technique is understood, and bike position and swim mechanics and all that sort of stuff is understood and is taught well or well enough or better.
It's more of we perceive it as more of a fundamental part of the sport, as opposed to you sort of, as a kid, you sort of just go and run and chase a ball, and guess you've learned how to run now, so off you go.
Exactly, and that probably goes back to your prior or initial question, is that we don't get taught. Like if you go to Little Athletics, even then, I didn't, I don't know if you did, but even then they get semi-taught some real basics, and obviously at that young age that has to be pretty basic, but even then the traditional movements, so no one really does. So where the hashtag came from was trying to get people to start to question it themselves. Who did teach me to run, or where did I get taught? And the reality is, no one really did. I put it up on my story a couple of weeks ago, saying, just randomly going, who taught you to run? Who actually, and I got a heap of responses. And some was my dad. My dad taught me, which is great, but unless they were really lucky that they had a dad who knew what they were doing.
He's an expert in the field, just happened to be a running coach.
Which is phenomenal. But I always talked to some mates, and one of my mates was saying, but a lot of the time it's kind of monkey see, monkey do. And I used to run a fair bit like my dad, which wasn't the most efficient. He used to run a lot, but wasn't the most efficient, and I think that happens. But also, or is it someone that you really respect and admire as a kid, and you go, I want to run like, say a football player. Like how many kids are probably running around similarly to, Dusty? He's got these little short little knee lift little steps, and still quick. Imagine how quick he could be. So I think that's like it's kind of like ask the question, and the amount of people are going, no one did. And yet every other skill, every other movement, you get taught. Like hitting a golf ball, if you're going to be any good at it, you're going to get taught. Swimming, you get taught. Just doing a deadlift, hope you get taught. Because otherwise you're going to injure yourself. Whereas running, it's just off you go.
Off you go.
You do some.
You have a reasonable idea. Get fitter, and you'll be a faster runner. Like I said, that some of these elites who have got probably not the best technique in the world, but there's so much untapped potential, but potentially is that something then like without knowing too much about the really top end in terms of I haven't seen anyone run recently on footage or anything, but is that where that breaking 2 concept is probably just a running mechanics
Well, I always find
issue? Those guys being so fit, can they break 2 hours for a marathon just by changing?
Getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like, that's one of the examples I use. You've got these 3 guys. One moves phenomenally. You know, and we all know who that is. The other 2, not so well. And yet, on the day, they didn't do so well, but obviously they're pretty phenomenal
they're class,
athletes. Yeah. One of them was a world record holder for the half marathon. I look at that, and they even said it in the documentary. Oh, you know, Kipchoge was so well. Look how, you know, just so smooth, and he is really, really good. They don't say the other 2 don't move very well, but they infer the fact that they
it's
don't.
It's implied, yeah.
So why don't they change them? Can they? I'm not sure. Like, they obviously know the biomechanics because there's doctors of biomechanics there and understand movement. And they, you know, the general layperson can see someone who runs really well.
Yeah.
Because there's something pure about it.
Yeah.
And you can see, holy shit, that person runs well. Maybe not so much.
Yeah.
So I look at that and I go, there's 2 guys with huge engines. They run pretty poorly, and yet they're so close. And funnily enough, I got a message this morning from one of my athletes who sent the finish line, the last 200 metres of the Boston Marathon this morning.
Yeah, we were talking about, Tyler and I were talking about before, just with like, it was what, 3 seconds at difference?
3 seconds, you look at the guy on the right, Elisa.
Yeah.
And he sent me a message going, if this guy had seen you for 6 months, he probably could have won.
Probably would have won.
Like, because if you watch him move, it's horrific. He looks like... He doesn't move well. I'm not... I won't say... But he doesn't move well. And if he could move well at the end of that... Like, you compare him to Kipchoge moving at the end of Berlin last year when he broke it.
Yeah. Completely different.
Completely different. He's still running strong and smooth and in good mechanics. This guy's thrashing. Thrashing's not going to help him get across the line any quicker than the guy next to him. And the guy next to him, you know, was better, albeit better, but not...
Yeah, still not that top end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I reckon there's something there. There has to be something there in that movement space, and it's across all sports. I mean, we see it time and time again with even guys running sort of Challenge Melbourne on the weekend. Sort of looking across social media, the guys who have come and done some run technique work, and they're flying, like they're breaking PBs, and maybe their physiology hasn't changed too much between the short term between a race a month apart, but they're so much quicker just because they've tweaked a few things. They're just a bit more conscious about what they're doing now. That's really all they're doing. They're just more aware of what one foot in front of the other, as opposed to I just need to get to the finish. I'm now thinking about what I'm doing.
And thinking about Challenge Melbourne, there's a guy called Nick Bensley. So he did just over 4 hours for, you know, like he was in the Open, wasn't even elites, like in Open.
Yeah.
He got top 10, maybe top 12 for the whole race. When it comes second age group at the first Open, I don't know how that works because he's entered in the Open and the other guy entered in the age group. He ran a 1:25 half marathon, which was 5 minutes faster than he's ever run a half marathon before, whether it be at the end of the 70.3 or just a strict half marathon.
Yeah.
After 2 Qs, and he ran a PB after the first one.
Quick.
And then he ran another PB after the second one, and he's still, I think it was 8 or 10 minutes slower than the guy that beat him, or even the guys that the elites. So he's got this 2-hour bike leg, pretty good swim, and his run's holding him back. Or all of a sudden we've taken like 10 minutes off his.
Smashed a bunch of time after 2 Qs.
2 Qs.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's been really helpful for me because he's like, after one session, he goes, it feels like a different sport. Like I'm moving in a manner that it feels like a different sport now, and now we just keep breaking it down for him because whilst he wasn't a horrific mover, it was really holding him back.
Yeah.
Like it was really restricting him.
Yeah. That's so he did a PB half marathon off the bike.
Yeah.
Regardless, that's quick.
Yeah. So he's never run the half marathon, whether it be pure running or Ironman.
Quicker than that.
Well, quicker than 90 minutes, let alone 85.
Yeah, that's massive. That's a big change. I know you're big on, and something I want to come to next, just sort of on the side of, we talked a lot about changing movement, changing someone's sort of awareness of their movement. It was something that in a social media post you put up, I couple of weeks ago talking about the misconception between doing strength work in the gym is going to get you better at that movement, but then maybe you just want to elaborate on, there's a link, but it's not the link that a lot of people probably associate.
Yeah, so, and it's funnily enough, well, Ben Simmons is playing basketball at the moment, because I said doing strength to improve your running technique is like telling Ben Simmons to get in the gym to improve his jump shot.
Yep.
So it was kind of implying that, you know, running is a skill, much like a jump shot,
Yep.
you know, like in shooting or a golf swing. Being stronger at that doesn't make the movement change. It will make you more powerful, or you can go for longer. So
Yep.
thinking about in a running, or you can go faster. However,
Still got to
your
learn the skill.
efficiency, the skill of the movement itself of running and the technique of running will not change. So this is the difference between like running economy. So being stronger in your movement
Yep.
can increase, I think some studies are saying 2 to 8%.
Yep.
In your running economy, so amount of oxygen used per,
Yep.
you know, for the movement. However, that doesn't change efficiency. Economy and efficiency, completely different. And strength and conditioning, part of technique, part of, you know, the
Yep.
greater puzzle.
Yep.
And it's not to discount that strength and conditioning isn't important, because
Yep.
for performance and injury prevention, it is.
It is.
However, it doesn't change a mechanic, and it
Yep.
doesn't make that movement better or more
Yep.
efficient.
Yep.
And that's lost, because I think too often the word efficiency is used without
In
an
the wrong
actual
place,
knowledge,
yeah.
without
Yeah.
an actual knowledge of what that means. And efficiency is doing the same movement by using less energy,
Yep.
or doing the same movement, same energy, and having less time. So there's the energy efficiency or time efficiency. Being stronger at the movement doesn't make you any less doesn't use any less energy,
Yep.
but it can make you go faster and longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and this is where you have this kind of debate or discussion with individuals who go, no, it makes you no, it doesn't quite make you more efficient.
Yep.
The movement doesn't change. And so then, and in one conversation in particular, I had a guy asking about you know, that post in particular, and I said, well, if someone comes into the gym and deadlifts poorly, do you send them across to the other side of the gym and make them do some, you know, crab walking and some clams, and then hope that they come back and can lift better? No, I teach them how to deadlift properly. So exactly.
Yeah.
So why would you send a runner across to the other side of the gym to do some clams and some crab walks?
Yeah.
And then when they come back, expect them to run any
better.
differently?
Yeah.
So, and that is as good of an example as I can give, because it's using strength and conditioning. It is using the skill of a deadlift. You have to teach the skill.
Yeah.
Running's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought that was a good one, because coming from a strength and conditioning background myself, I looked at it and went, yeah, it makes sense. You got to teach a skill. But it is that interesting one, because it is the first thing people jump to, because it's sort of, I guess, the cool thing to add into your training. I do strength sessions as well. I squat, I dead, whatever it is. But yeah, if you're still not running,
Moving
great.
poorly. Yeah.
You're still going to move poorly. You're just going to put out a little bit more power when you're moving poorly.
Yeah, and you're going to be able to do it for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
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 So, and it's good that you didn't look at it and go, oh, that's bullshit. But it's true. Like,
I think a little bit I did initially when I first I was flicking through and I was like, hang on, what is it? What's he going on about? And I went back, but yeah, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. It's you can't expect someone to learn something by not teaching them or not having the opportunity for them to learn it.
And I think like that has been a result of what I touched on before about if the technique side of things hasn't been done well previously.
Yep.
What's the next best thing that I can hold on to, or you know, what else is it that I can get some benefit for my running?
Yep.
Because I went to a session and I got told that I'm in this position. I got a video showing me how I could improve my movement and where I should be, but I don't know how to get there.
Yep.
So whilst I understand I'm not moving well and I could be better, I haven't been taught how to do it better. So what else can I do?
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, strength and conditioning, you can, because you can go in, you can lift, you can target areas, people who teach that well, you know. So there is a win, but it's not the win that you can get from this. And then all of a sudden it's, oh no, you can be more efficient if you're stronger.
Yeah. And it's looking at it's that whole piece of the puzzle. It's the same way. I mean, this is why we've sort of work closely together as Mets and you over the last little while is that we work on the physiology side of things, which is just one piece of the puzzle. I mean, you can get as fit as you like, but at the end of the day, again, if the missing piece of the puzzle is just how well you're running, I mean, that's going to unlock a whole bunch of untapped potential when we then retest in here. We've seen it time and time again. So it's you can't just single out one area and be like, I'm just going to spend all my time here, and then it's not working, so I'm going to take all my time out and go somewhere else in the strength conditioning space or into running technique. You've got to have that balance.
And if we flip it in reverse, like I know I move okay. However, I'm not winning races and I'm not running fast because I don't do enough of the training, the physiology, and the extra stuff to it. Like, I'm good at that piece. Doesn't mean I'm good at, the other ones. Because if I don't work on it, or if I don't get the correct advice, or or actually put the time into it, then it's not going to work.
It's useless.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can look really nice, but if you're running slow, it's not going to help you.
It moves really well.
It's like, hey, he's really smooth today, but he's running 6-minute K pace and just chipping away.
But geez, it looks good.
Yeah, he looks real smooth.
He's heaving, but so, and I get embarrassed sometimes, like posting about my athletes and celebrations and all that sort of stuff, and often pretty quick to let them know, like, I understand that it's not just what I've done with them, but it's a piece of the puzzle, and it's something that I want to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I was go, hang on, I just spent 15 hours a week training in some form, and you're saying congratulations. But it's a piece too, and it's also to celebrate them.
Yeah. So the camera died before, battery went flat, so we're just going to pick up from where we left off and go through the last couple of questions just to sort of wrap up the podcast here. So we'll hopefully get some of the similar answers or what you had before. We'll see how we go. But a few questions that we have been asking all the guys, or will be asking all the guys when they come on as guests on the podcast, that we'll go through now. So first of all, favourite book?
Shoe Dog. That's what I said, wasn't it? Phil Knight's book about the Nike story and where he started from and what he did. I just thought it was a really good story. Less to do with, the shoes and the development of shoes, and we can sort of take that aside, but just about the story of a business and an individual, and it's really well written. Yeah.
Super relevant too to obviously what you do in running and being in that space. We were sort of talking about before off camera about the stuff with the new 4%ers and sort of all the tech and that going into it. So I guess Nike being sort of the leaders in that space, I guess if you like, pretty interesting. So check it out. So
I think we've all worn a pair at some stage. And most likely we've all worn a pair.
Or had something from a t-shirt to hoodie, whatever it is.
Yeah, and just to hear the story of where it came from, where it went to, and how he did it.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, it's like so much of it had no idea. And it was just cool to actually get a better understanding of that and how it all came about.
Yeah, cool. Favourite quote?
Strength doesn't change movement. Movement changes movement.
Yeah, that's a good one. Favourite coach or person in the industry?
So I think I mentioned him earlier on in the chat. It was Lex Anderson. So he said he was generous enough to teach me everything he knew at the time and gave me kind of a really solid background and understanding in what I do now, and sort of developed it and taken it in a way that I feel comfortable with and probably suits more my teaching styles and understandings. But for a guy who spent 20 years through his learnings and his understandings and readings, to be able to actually share that in the manner that he did, super appreciative. But also he's a guru at this stuff, and understands it well. He's really good.
Yeah, cool. Recommendation for who we should get on the podcast. Given we had the break, we probably should have looked up the name. The name of the athlete. We went down, got coffee, had a bit of a break, had a bit of a chat, watched some NBA. But you mentioned before the girl just broke 2 minutes for the 800.
Yeah. Twice in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah.
What was your reasoning again about the type of training that sort of do? Just want to take me through what we're sort of talking about.
Yeah, so it was the two reasons, obviously. To break 2 minutes, I think it's the third Australian female to do it, or there's not a lot, and one of the more recent ones, Tamsin Manu, Lewis Manu, broke it but didn't break the record, and other than that I can't remember too many others, and there's been a lot recently knocking on the door around that 2:01, so for that reason. But I was thinking more along the training styles and the traditional training techniques of sort of 800 and 1500 metre taps into a lot of the stuff that you guys do and the stuff that I've learned off in regards to kind of higher VO2 threshold sessions where you've got efforts and recovery and not floating, and they're stopping. And speaking to another mate who does strength and conditioning and does that kind of stuff and working with the VIS, he was telling me about some of the studies coming through that, and understanding that they've been doing it right almost by chance. It's just okay, well this is 800 and 1500 training.
Yeah.
But actually that should be the training that should be doing all the way through to marathon. Like obviously then you got to include distance and all that sort of thing, but those type of sessions aren't just for 1800-1500. They just happen to be lucked upon.
Yeah. They've just at some point in time going, this seems reasonably specific to what we do.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Whereas 5Kers, 10K marathon guys go, what do I need to do? Run long and slow. And that's what we've just traditionally seen for years and years and years is let's go out and do lots of Ks, lots of long, slow volume.
And always floats and always running. You can't stop, you can't do anything. And
no recovery.
Or recovery is just a bit slower. And there's a place for it. You know, like there's places for that stuff as well. However, if you're not targeting all the areas, as you explain a lot better than I do, then you're not getting those adaptations. And then it just becomes like those kind of mental blocks or those kind of thought processes just becomes tradition.
Yeah.
And it's all traditionally, 5-10 marathon. No, you're always going to be doing, or you're getting those extra Ks, and you go, well, tradition doesn't mean it's always been done correctly.
Or it doesn't mean it's correct either. I mean, like we said with 800, they sort of stumbled upon it by chance, but even then, is there potentially a better way for those guys to go about it? It probably is. There's going to be something that we always find something new. So
and I gave you the story about the hunter sessions the couple of weeks ago, and doing that specific one on, one off, and times by 15, and a few of them decided they'd want to float and jog in between, and by rep 4 or 5 they were cooked, and the people who were doing it properly were actually catching up to them, and just that lack of understanding that it is a tough session, and if it's pushing you in a manner at that higher end, then it's going to help you, and that was that light bulb moment for a few of them, working with them, going, shit, this is actually a bit different, and I ran faster, and I'm cooked, and I'm working a different part of my range.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. We'll still have to go find some details there. We've got a few connections here. We can try and make to get that up on the podcast, but I reckon it'd be really good.
Yeah, I reckon it should be
really good episode.
And just what she's been doing to get to that point, and she's part of a group, like a well-known group in Melbourne, and yet she's the one that's come through and done pretty well.
Yeah, cool. Last one here, sort of chatted about before, but plug your socials, mostly on Instagram.
Mostly on Instagram, The Balanced Runner, all one word. Facebook, I'm on it. Irregularly, but I'm on it. You
have a Facebook page, but
I don't use it as frequently as probably what I should do. One thing at a time for old fellas like me.
Cool.
So Instagram's the way to go.
That's the easiest way to get in touch with you as well. If you're looking at book sessions, things like that.
Yeah, because you go to Instagram and then they'll send you through to the website, or you can go email straight from the Instagram page anyway. Yeah,
cool. Easy done, mate. Sorry for the bit of a delay in the middle there. We went and grabbed coffee and all that. We got the basketball up on the screen behind us as well. So thanks for coming back on the podcast. We'll have to get you back in it at some point for another episode. But
sounds great.
I mentioned this before, and I'm gonna plug him again because he is the go-to guy on running technique and movement. Unreal with the stuff that he's done for not only myself, Luke, but then all the athletes that we have here. We always recommend him. We've got his business cards sitting on our desk at the front when you walk in the door. He doesn't pay us to say this as much as we probably like him to at times, but he doesn't pay us to say it. We say it because we genuinely recommend it. So if you are interested in checking it out, I'll leave his details below so you can book in a session. And otherwise, we'll see you in another episode of the Physiology Secrets podcast.